There are dreamers, there are high achievers, and then there's Tanzaburo Tojima, a 40-year-old man who doesn't just dream of being a hero, but trains for it. Most superheroes were born with powers, or at least after a bit of training, they saw an immense power boost, but for Tojima, things were completely the opposite, harder, and tragic. This is the story of Tanzaburo Tojima, the man who refused to stop believing and got something so amazing that even fate was surprised. Before we get into the specifics of Tojima, do give us a sub if you like character analysis videos. Alright, let's jump on in. He was a sore loser in life, not having anything interesting about him, and yet he still trains for it, bleeds for it. He lives every second believing that one day he will stand shoulder to shoulder with the legendary Kamen Rider. But what happens when fantasy meets the harsh weight of reality? What happens when a man who's spent decades pretending to be a hero decides to finally become one for real? From the very first episode, Tojima wants to be a Kamen Rider, doesn't waste a single second building the premise. We meet Tanzaburo Tojima, a middle-aged part-time worker who seems like just another face in Japan's endless city crowds. But beneath his worn-out tracksuit and demeanor, there's a tired smile that hides a lifetime of obsession. You see, as a child, Tojima watched the original Kamen Rider with wide eyes. Not only did he memorize every single pose, but he also knew about technicalities like the transformations and every heroic speech. And while other fans started growing up, socializing, and becoming great in life, Toji never actually did. For him, Kamen Rider wasn't just a show, it was more of a purpose, his life, and everything we could want in our lives. Then came Tojima's adult years, where he started collecting memorabilia, saving money to attend conventions, and training his body like a man who was preparing for a war, even though most people saw him as invisible. However, reality doesn't care about your childhood dreams, and by 40, Tojima's life had shrunk to part-time jobs and lonely nights in a cramped apartment that was filled with fading posters and aging action figures. For the few episodes released, we see that this show makes you feel Tojima's emptiness. It was the slow decay of a man who realizes that his dream has left him behind to the point where he must do something crazy and unthinkable. So one day, Tojima goes to the store and sells all his Kamen Rider merchandise. Every figure, every belt, and every mask was gone. Not because Tojima stopped believing it, but because he was preparing for death. At this time, Tojima says to himself, "If I die alone, I don't want my treasures to end up in the trash." Even in this abandonment, we can see his love for the show. This devastating line was a moment of self-awareness and heartbreak for the guy, but it was also the beginning of everything. And we know that even dogs see a brighter day someday, which is the same that happened with Tojima. Life treated him in a funny way. During a summer festival in episode 2, Tojima stumbles upon chaos. It was a group of robbers who were dressed as Shocker members, the classic villains from the Kamen Rider series. Most people would run away, but Tojima, he sees it as a sign from fate. As the Shocker imposters were kicking a shop owner and bullying him, something deep awakened within Tojima, and in a burst of childlike excitement and desperate courage, he rushed to a nearby vendor buying a cheap plastic Kamen Rider 1 mask and shouted out one word that defined his life and took all the attention of people, including the robbers. Tojima says, "Henshin!" That single yell marks the moment where Tojima stops pretending and starts becoming. The robbers were literally dying with laughter at how childish he was and how a grown-up man was wearing a mask, all while crying like a baby. But Tojima, in a fit of excitement and fury, destroyed the robbers with his sheer willpower and nothing else. How do you stop a man who's not afraid of dying? For the first time, the anime turns his delusions into something real. The animation sharpens, his movements slow, and we see the man transform. The man fights with pure instinct and manages to overcome one of the robbers despite taking a brutal hit himself. In just a few moments, all the robbers were on the ground, and the world was surprised. Tojima was standing tall, mask cracked, fists trembling, and eyes blazing with conviction. Then, he told everyone that he is dead serious, basically implying that he wants to become a Kamen Rider in real life. from that day, Tojima's life changed. The aftermath of the festival changed everything. Tojima, bruised but alive, realized that his lifelong obsession wasn't actually foolish. It was his destiny. That night, he vowed to live as a true Kamen Rider, no matter what it cost him. But this isn't your typical superhero origin because there's no superhuman transfer going on. Not yet, at least. Just a 40-year-old man, his hands and heart, the punches that hit harder than a truck, as seen in many of his encounters with other characters, and the shockers. Tojima starts training again, harder than ever. But this time, he goes into the mountains with nothing but water, a few rice balls, and a photo of Kamen Rider 1. There, he builds a small camp and begins his brutal regimen. Running up slopes with logs on his back, punching trees until they split, and standing under freezing waterfalls until his body nearly gives out. Locals started whispering about a madman fighting bears in the mountains, and once he actually did fight a mountain bear, which terrified Tojima. But he stood tall. He took a huge scratch from the bear, but ultimately, he jumped from the paw of the bear, pierced his elbow into the bear, and ultimately won the battle. The anime turns his training arc into something hilarious and inspiring. But anyway, now that he was sunburned and starving, he stands over the ground with nothing but more valor than ever. Because even in that ridiculous moment, you realize that Tojima's power doesn't come from the mask or a belt, it comes from his unbelievable training and a completely unshakable belief. After the hard training, Tojima returns to town. Leaner, tougher, and a little unhinged compared to before, but one thing's for sure, he's ready to fight. The streets, however, didn't change. Crime, apathy, and imitation shockers were everywhere and believed to have taken over the market. People walked with their heads down, pretending not to see, but Tojima decided not to be like that. He started patrolling the streets wearing his cracked mask. To most, he was just a joke. During the second episode, we saw some new faces. The first one was Yuriko Okara, a young woman who takes on the name Tackle 2, inspired by Kamen Rider's strongest ally. Of course, when we see the news of Tojima kicking the hell out of the shockers, she was surprised and angry at how brazen and weird he looked. Kamen Rider's strongest ally, Electrowave Human Tackle, inspired Yuriko. But unlike Tojima, she isn't delusional. Yuriko is driven purely by justice. After being saved by Tojima, she sees something genuine in his madness, though. When the same shockers appeared outside a grocery store, this time, Tojima was the first one to appear. As soon as they started fighting, Yuriko came in and kicked the living hell out of not only the imitation shockers, but also our hero, saying that it's her turn to shine properly. This left Tojima shocked that there was someone out there like him, but overall, he was still out there trying to prove himself. Quickly, they form an unlikely duo, a middle-aged rider and the beautiful partner who basically tries to keep him alive. But for now, they're still sort of enemies at each other. After kicking the hell out of those shockers, Yuriko went away and left Tojima wondering what actually happened here. By episode 3, they both heard about a shocker robbery, and even though they weren't even close yet, both Tojima and Yuriko found themselves at the start of a supermarket where the same old shockers were robbing. But what they didn't know was that something was about to change. Something terrible was happening inside as they were arguing outside the market, as always. At this point, Yuriko stared at our hero just a little bit, but was still quite skeptical of it. As soon as they went inside the supermarket, they found out that a person was beating all the shockers already. This person, bigger and stronger than the imitation shockers, actually destroyed them in one go without much trouble. After Yuriko and him went into the mart, they realized that they were fighting a real shocker. The tone shifted from comedy to genuine danger, and for the first time, Tojima's fantasy collided with something that was not only fictional in their world, but also truly terrifying. As soon as he decided to attack the monster, he got completely outclassed in ways that even Tojima didn't understand. However, he was in a state similar to ecstasy because that's something unbelievable that he just achieved. He barely escapes with his life thanks to Yuriko, and if she weren't present, he would be a dead man standing. In a few moments, Yuriko and Tojima, with their amazing beginner synergy, destroyed even the shocker, making them an unbeatable duo. They were shocked to see what they had achieved, and were quite happy until things changed. From the shadows, another man appeared, a shocker, but this one had powers that they could not even comprehend. He looked like a monster with his face transforming into that of an actual predator. When Tojima and Yuriko saw him, they were scared for their lives. But he just looked at them and then left. I guess our heroes weren't even worth bothering over fighting. Tojima later realized that this enemy was something that could have truly destroyed them. However, after the dust had settled, things changed, and Tojima and Yuriko started becoming friends. Right after the shocker and the monster interfered, it was Yuriko's turn in school, where she got approached by the girlfriend of a waiter that they were talking to. While she can manage her own, it's Tojima who needs more care. At its core, Tojima Wants to Be a Kamen Rider isn't a parody, it's a love letter. The anime celebrates the spirit of Kamen Rider while grounding it in a human struggle. To all the fans who have ever wanted to be one of the superheroes, Tojima Wants to Be a Kamen Rider totally delivers. Tanzaburo Tojima isn't a superhero. He doesn't have a single cybernetic implant, a superbike, or even a flashy costume. He's just a 40-year-old man with worn sneakers, a plastic mask, and unbreakable faith. And yet, whenever danger appears, when people scream and darkness rises, something flips in our hero. Tojima becomes a risk-taker, a badass, and someone who you wouldn't expect to ace the fight, yet somehow, he always does. The series portrays his battles as metaphors for perseverance. Every punch is a fight against cynicism. Even after Ichio came in episode 4 and started dissing our hero, Tojima never gave up and punched him quite a lot, surprising someone who had been specifically training to become the strongest Kamen Rider. Overall, the anime shows us absurdity, there are a lot of touching moments, yet somehow, Tojima makes it inspiring all at once. At the end of the 4th episode, Tojima, Yuriko, and Ichio stand cornered with shockers. From here, his hero's journey becomes a real journey. And that's why Tojima Wants to Be a Kamen Rider. If you enjoyed this breakdown, do subscribe to our channel and ring that bell icon for future videos. I'll catch you next time.